Hello everyone. So, I have just finished rewatching Star Trek Enterprise. Hear me out. This is one of the more divisive Star Trek series of the entire, Star Trek universe. People either really love this series, but most of them, frankly, really hate this series. I watched this series at a very interesting time in my life, and I wanted to give it an honest second try. I wanted to give it, a real honest try to really give it a chance. And yeah, I still pretty much hate it. But I really wanted to pick apart and analyze and understand exactly why I hate this show so much. I know that sounds really silly, but I really wanted to understand what exactly about it made it so bad. Obviously, the original series stands alone. There is never going to be another Captain Kirk, Dr. McCoy, and Scotty, or Spock. There is never going to be that crew again. We are always going to be nostalgic for the original series because, of course, it was first, it's iconic, it's amazing, and some of it doesn't hold up as well as the rest of it, but honestly, it was a really groundbreaking show, and it was important, and those characters had really great chemistry, and yeah, that's why it's still good. Star Trek Enterprise is a prequel series. It takes place before the original series, and so that's kind of the first problem. Anytime you do a prequel series, you pretty much know exactly how everything's going to go. You know exactly how far they're going to take things. You know that they can't do certain things and they won't do certain other things because we'll break the continuity that already exists. So right off the hop, you have these limits on what the show can actually do. Because if they do anything huge, you would think they'd still be talking about it in the original series and certainly in the later series of the shows. So the first thing I want to talk about actually with Enterprise is the theme song, and okay, it's bad. I mean, it's not just a bad song because it is also a bad song, but it's also the fact that it is a song. It's music that sounds like it came off the radio from the early 2000s, which I get is what they were going for, but that's not Star Trek to me. And I get that this is sort of like starting Star Trek as a thing, like they're leading into this is where we came from and this is where we're going, and the actual titles are alluding to that with visual imagery. They're going from this is the continuity of human exploration and this is just the next step. And I like what they were going for thematically. It's a lot better than the ship zooming past and being look how fast we can go through the stars. But it's supposed to make me feel connected with humanity, but honestly it just makes me oh right, we still suck. That's kind of what I got from it anyway. I don't know. And then on top of it, the fact that I'm distracted from those visuals by this really boring music and this really boring set of lyrics, I'm just what is happening right now? The first time I watched the show, I was what is this? Yeah, so the theme song is just not very good, and I was doing my rewatch on Netflix, so thank God there's a skip intro button, and I never used that button, but oh my god, it made the show just a little bit more watchable, and that was something, and I'll take it. Alright, so the first 2 seasons of the show are really more standalone episodes, similar to what you see in Star Trek Next Generation, Star Trek the original series, things like that. Whereas the latter 2 seasons are more like Star Trek Voyager, where there's a continuity of a thing that is continuing to happen, and the later seasons of Deep Space Nine, which I do need to rewatch at least Voyager in preparation for the Picard series, and probably Next Generation, but I've frankly watched that so many times I don't think a rewatch would actually do me much good. Anyway, yeah, so the first 2 seasons are more what I would consider classic Star Trek, in that whole there is an overarch, but it's not the reason they're out there. It's primarily just exploration and what's around the next corner, and I kind of like that. And I kind of like seeing the development of the Universal Translator and things like that, and what technologies and procedures need to be in place in order for them to safely traverse and explore the galaxy and everything, and I think that's a really cool idea. I think they could have sold me on that idea very easily. Where this show falls amazingly short is in the execution of that, because I don't think the show writers really understood exactly who the show was for, and therefore we don't really know what the hell to make of it, because it simultaneously talks down to you while talking about how great the future is. It's trying to sell you on the concept of technology and exploration and why this is important and how we can better our species through exploration of space and everything, while talking down to you as if you know nothing about space, nothing about science. And like, I'm fine with that because I understand that I'm a little biased in this. Like, I've been a longtime Star Trek fan, but that's also the problem because I'm part of the target audience. And I can't exactly decide who the target audience for this show is. I feel like it's for Star Trek nerds, kids. Like, I feel like it's a show to watch with their kids, which is okay, but then other times it goes way over the head of kids and you're like having to explain to them what is happening and why, and like I'm like, okay, who is this for, you know? And I'm all about talking up to kids. I think that's really important. I really think that kids deserve to be talked up to, similar to, frankly, Winnie the Pooh does this really well. Like, there's layers involved in it, and you want to explain to your kids what's going on and they'll get more out of it as they age and stuff. And I think that's really important, but this show has almost no rewatch value because in the end, it's all so on the nose that you can't actually care about anything because there's nothing else there to care about. It's just so in your face. There's no nuance whatsoever. Like, it deals with these heavy-handed themes, but in a way that is not either exactly heavy-handed or subtle. And it's sort of just this awkward middle ground where it's like, you're too stupid to understand what we're actually doing, but also smart enough that you'll get it if we put it right in your face. And I'm like, I don't know exactly, that's a weird middle ground you've got going there. Like, every single bit of it, from the writing itself to the actual plot to the dialogue, is just like, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And the other problem that we have is that we're never really given character intros. We're never really given any biographical information about these people. They're just sort of there and you're just in the moment with them and you're just supposed to like emotionally invest in these characters you know nothing about, and they're completely replaceable. You don't know who's going to be around because they're nobodies in the future. And here's where we really get into spoilers, because like the final episode where Trip dies, you're like, okay, hold on, wait, we're supposed to care about this character. This is one of the main characters we've been following through the entire show, and they like kill him off in this meaningless way after all these crazy things that he's lived through. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, it wasn't thematic at all. They didn't even make a point about it. He just dies and they're like, all right, well, he's dead. And that's the end of the show. Like, the show ends with him dying and there's nothing there that makes me care. Like, it's not even part of that universe. It's done on the holodeck of the Enterprise D. And I'm like, so not only do I not care about these characters because they're shallow, they're also holodeck characters. I mean, based on historical figures, obviously, but still, they're literally not even real people. And then there's like this whole issue of retconning, because like the show broke those limits that I talked about earlier. They brought in the Borg. I'm like, how can you bring in the Borg without anyone in the future having any idea about this? How can you bring in all these other things? Like, I don't know. There were so many examples of retconning in this series where I'm like, no. Like what they did with the Romulans, I would have loved to see the Romulan War, but it doesn't even seem to fit in this universe, and maybe that's explained by the Temporal Cold War, but no, right at the end we're brought onto the Enterprise D, and it's like, nope, this is what actually happened in the Prime Universe. And I'm like, okay, then how do we explain the discrepancies between these things? And it doesn't help that by the time we get to Picard's Enterprise, Enterprise D, they are measuring warp speed differently. So when they're talking about warp 5, they're actually not talking about the same warp 5 that most of us are familiar with in the later series. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. I don't know. And that's sort of my feeling about the show in general, is that it just doesn't work. Like, it's a halfway decent idea, and then like the execution falls so abysmally short of it, and I'm just bored the whole time. Like, I didn't have to pay any attention to actually like enjoy the show. There's nothing there. And that carries through in so many ways, because you feel like there's no consequence, because you know it has to lead somewhere, because they've already told you the future of Jonathan Archer and all this stuff. And occasionally they surprise you with some things, but like, seriously, we know there's no consequences in this universe except when Trip dies randomly for no reason. So even when we get consequences, they don't actually have thematic impact. There's no theme here, and they keep bringing on this theme about like humanity coming together and bringing all these species together and like the beauty of diversity and everything, while shutting it down. I don't know. And this carries through into the fight sequences. Like, they are so boring and they go on for so long. And every time Kirk's shirt got ripped in a fight, I get it, it's gratuitous, but like, you felt something because you were invested in that fight because you'd been leading up to it throughout the episode. Like, you knew who Kirk was, you knew why he was there, what he was fighting for, what he stood for. Every time you watch Archer, you're like, am I getting pissed off Archer or am I getting, like, philosophical Archer? I have no idea because this man has no character. Like, that's sort of the problem. You know, like, it's all just so inconsequential and it goes on forever. And frankly, this is an example of the technology being ahead of the writing. Because like we have all these epic space battles. This show weirdly has some of the best CG in it because it was made later than all the other series. And I don't care. Like, I don't care what's happening on screen because I don't care about the consequences. First of all, because I know the outcome. Second of all, because it's just going on for 10 minutes. I don't know any of the characters involved or their motivations or anything. One of the episodes of the original series that people often say is pretty boring is the episode where the Romulans are showing up and they're literally cloaked the entire time. I've heard it described as submarine warfare, and I'm like, that is exactly it, because you can't really see each other, you know they're out there and all that. But somehow they managed to maintain tension in that episode, and frankly, this show can't do that. Like, we care that these captains are evenly matched with each other. They're both brilliant, they're good tacticians, they know what they're doing, like they're out there, they're tense, and it comes through in William Shatner's acting. Like, what? Granted, he's a little overdramatic in every case, but still, like, we care. And with Archer, I just don't care. And don't get me started on the space Nazis. It's to the point where they do a mirror universe episode and like, I can't tell if the characters are actually mirrored or different or not because there are no characters. And everyone's perfect at their jobs until they're not. And it's so many contrivances and just, I don't know, the series is weak. And honestly, rewatching it now fully, I don't think I'll ever watch it again. Because for the last several years, I kept starting this series and then being like, oh no, this is why I hated the show. And I said, you know what, this time I'm gonna actually commit to like getting through the first season. And good lord, what a slog that was. I get it, shows take some time to find their footing, to get off the ground and everything, except maybe Firefly. The point is, it can absolutely be done, and it was so not. And honestly, I don't understand how some of this can even be canon. Like, honestly, Star Trek Enterprise is by far the worst Star Trek series I have ever watched. So, I don't know. I feel like this is a series that is pretty divisive. I feel like there's going to be a lot of people that agree with me wholeheartedly and a lot of people that are like, nope, this show is great and you're too stupid to understand it. Would have to be that crowd in order for this to make any sense. Anyway, yeah, so tell me what you think in the comments. I might do a top 5 episodes video about this now that I've invested several hours of my life in rewatching it. I might do a bottom 5 to counter that. We'll see. But that is all for this week. I will be back again next week with another video that I hope you will find interesting. Until then, stay curious.